Okay, so technical issues here, but I think we can start. I would invite Lynn and Jill to turn on the cameras and the mics, please. Good morning, Jill.
Good morning. How are you?
So nice to see you. So this is a second talk that we will have in our conference, and it's probably a different kind of talk. We have, I'll just summarize because you have a fruitful life and you will have a lot of experiences to share. But Jill, what I know about you is that you were born in the USA, you are a daughter of teachers, you graduated in education, and God knows why you decided to move to Portugal in 1993 and you are still here. And Lynn, you are like all over the place. You do inspiring talks. You help schools moving to another stage. You do learning design, pedagogical consultancy, and we are all glad that you met us in Finland, and as you could see, people started to move school furniture around just to make sure that they had learned and applied something that they learned with you in Finland. So what I would do is, you probably have a lot to let us know about education, and I would just start with a question of what schools do you want? Why do you thrive in education? Why do you still do something, and why do you still are passionate about education? What is the school that you are trying to design and to implement? Feel free to.
Is that or me?
Just leave your mic on and you are free to talk whenever.
Do you want to go first? No, okay. Education, you can change. It's okay?
It's back and forward. You have to disconnect the mic. That's okay. Oh, it's up again. Now it's okay, but now it's not. It's kind of strange because your mic is always on and off and on and off. Now it's, let's see. Your mic is off. Now is off and now is on. Yeah. No. Are you pressing the mic, Jill?
No.
Are you doing something in your laptop? Because the mic is always turning on and off.
Okay.
So while you may solve that little problem, I could maybe have a go at it. That was such a big question, and thank you for inviting me to join this panel here. So what kind of education are we looking for, and why is it that we keep being passionate about these things? There's so many. For years when I've been giving talks, we've talked about how much change is ahead of us and how in the next 100 years we're going to see more change than we have in the last 1,000 years. And I think it wasn't until Corona that it really hit us that, hey, this is, it can be really massive. Change can come from out of the blue and really affect us all. And how do we then cope with that? So it's really about how do we create meaningful educational experiences for young people that allows them to really thrive in life and build a life that they dream of, and also equip them with the skills and competences to actually face the world that we are in today, because it is unpredictable in many ways. It's uncertain in many ways, and yet it is also what you make it yourself. It's about the perspective you have and what you do. So to me, it's super important that we help every young person become or develop entrepreneurial skills in their own life. I'm not talking about business skills as such. I'm talking about being an entrepreneur in your own life and the leader of your own life, so that you are able to actually carve out a path for yourself and that you are able to make things happen. because there's no fixed solutions that any of us can go to anymore. But we need a broad toolbox, and we need to know how to apply things, and we need to know how to learn new things. So it's definitely, knowledge is still super important. It's not important that every child has the same specific knowledge, but it's important that you acquire knowledge and you apply knowledge, and that you put it into context in meaningful settings. So that's one thing. Another thing that I find really important is when we look at young people today, we see, at least in our part of the world, we see a lot of young people who are disengaged from school, who might not find it that meaningful, and who are actually, in a sense, wasting a lot of their time in being either bored or disengaged. And I'd love for them to be able to be passionate about their lives. Also in school, it's not like life doesn't just happen when you wait for it and then you grow up and then it happens. Life is all the time. So we all deserve to have passionate lives that are meaningful to us, and that enriches us and enriches those around us. So that's really what we want to bring about, that experience for every person really here.
I love what you said, and I
don't know if we have my colleague on board.
Jill is already talking, and we can listen to her. Yeah, go ahead, Jill.
I completely agree with everything that you said. And I wanted to add, which I think is what you were saying as well, is we want the children to be independent. We don't want them to be dependent on the teacher. So but in order for them to feel comfortable and confident, they need to feel welcome and valued and a part of the daily decisions. So when they come in, you want them to want to run in and be excited and, oh, we're going to do this, or let's, what do you think we can do? And so if they feel comfortable, they'll be able to do that. If they don't feel comfortable, they might feel shy and not participate as much. And so right away, we need to set up the environment, set up the communication and the emotional environment so that the children feel like they're all valued and they're all part of the group. It's not, the teacher does help guide certain things, but all of the children are teachers. All of the children can participate and bring up ideas and initiate things that they want to do. We want to learn about the Komodo dragon today. Okay, well, let's talk about that. I also, what we try to do is get to know the children's strengths and weaknesses. And how can we use their strengths to improve their weaknesses? Or how can we use their strengths to help other people's weaknesses? But the most important thing is that every child has an opportunity and actually shines every day. Because everybody's got challenges, everybody's got difficulties, but everyone has the right to feel like they can participate and teach others something. And once that happens, behavior of the children, in my opinion, improves dramatically. They become more calm. I mean, they're excited, but it's that inner feeling like I can and I am a part of this. And even though we have to have, let's say, I'm going to say strict rules, meaning we need to remember that we need to respect others. When one person is talking, the other people are listening. So we have these rules, social rules, but that doesn't mean one person will be talking all of the time. So it's, at the end of the day, we are all teachers and we are all students, no matter how good we are at something or how old we are, whether we're the teacher or the student. Is there anything else that you'd like to ask about that? Yes.
You started a school here in Portugal. So
Yes.
probably when you arrived, you noticed that our educational system is still very traditional. So how do you design a learning experience with purpose and meaning? And how do you do it in a very traditional setting like Portugal?
So I heard, how do you design a school for
Not sure if we think we are missing. Yeah. So, Lynn, I'll raise the same question. How do you help schools designing learning experiences with purpose and meaning? Because the space makes a lot of difference in what you do.
Sorry, I didn't. Are you talking to me, or are you talking to me?
I was asking, when you arrived in Portugal and you decided to open a school, the educational setting in Portugal is very traditional, and it still is. So how do you design the learning experiences that you provide in your school to be meaningful and to be and to have purpose if you have to deal with a very traditional setting and very traditional frameworks for what schools could be here?
It's a good question. Well, it's interesting because people started bringing their children to me in my home, and it wasn't a school. You know, it looked like a school, but they said, "Can I leave my child with you?" So it was sort of like, it was handed to me. Granted, I'm passionate about it. I studied a lot. So what I wanted to do was figure out, what is everybody else doing in the world? I don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. And in Portugal, there have been different people who have, I think it's Mr. Naya years and years ago, and there's some other people who have done amazing things about getting out of shifting from the traditional way of teaching. I just think, let's look at what's out there. There's Reggio Emilia. So I went to Reggio Emilia in 2007. It was amazing. Then they told me about the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So I went to seminars there since 2008. I maintain contacts. I dream. I talk to my parents, and because they were teachers as well for many, many years. But I'm also a mother. And what I also thought of is, what would I want for my child? So whether it's traditional or non-traditional, I mean, traditional, I would say the child has to adapt to the school. Whereas non-traditional might be the school adapts to the child. In other words, the children, they come in, what do you love? What are you interested in? They might not be able to answer, but you could say, oh, I see that you love gardening. I see that you love animals. Here, let's do it this way. So you can teach the ABCs or counting or anything that you want through anything. So when I was growing up, I loved horses. And if you wanted to teach me how to read, you could teach me through horses. Okay, well, children come in and I want to know what they love. Because if they are motivated, they can learn anything. Now, your question was, how do you do it? You just have to be wild and crazy and just take healthy risks and do your best to find a way through the traditional system of doing something that's non-traditional. But the most important thing is that you're passionate about education. So when I started teaching in 1993, I had some ideas. And I actually was in Rome at a conference in 1994, and I met the people from Reggio Emilia. And I actually sort of made a fool out of myself because it was obvious that I was quite ignorant about child development. But then, 5 years later, my son was born, and I learned a lot more about child development. So don't be afraid of your limitations. You can learn, you can develop, but never stay stagnant and say, oh, well, children need to learn blue on Tuesdays or learn about letter B on Fridays. It's just this dynamic sense of, okay, I learned this yesterday and I'll learn something new today. Every child that we teach actually is our teacher as well. And then what we've learned from other children in our past, we can apply to some children in the future. But again, because every child is unique, we'll be learning constantly. So we should never cease learning. And it is really, really difficult to open a school, as you guys know. There are so many ways that you might think that you're going to give up. The pandemic almost, did us in many different ways. But trying to find a way to get through it, hopefully not alone, hopefully together in your community, you can find a way to get through it. And so it's been really, really, really complex for everybody all around the world. So many schools have closed. We've been very, very lucky. Our parents are extremely supportive, and somehow we managed to stay alive. But I think that the parents understand the number one reason why we're here. We are here to provide the closest to ideal learning environment for the children that we possibly can. And no matter how much money somebody might have to build a school, there's nothing more important than your passion and your love for learning. So that's what we have to concentrate on. We can't concentrate on money all the time. We need to, our number one priority should be providing a very meaningful educational service to families.
Yeah.
And keeping an open mind, listening to the parents, what they have to say, and not get too defensive. Like, oh, why did you serve pasta on Wednesday? And oh, well, we have to serve pasta on Wednesday. No, don't get upset. Just, find a way. Well, the children love pasta on Wednesday, and that's why we do it. I know that's sort of a crazy example.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. If you have any other questions.
No, I think, Joe, it's I would connect now with Lynn because you were talking about money, and sometimes when we talk about learning environments, we have that feeling that good schools are the ones, and teachers have this feeling that good schools are the ones with fantastic buildings and all the physical conditions that you can dream of. But you don't need all the money in the world to have a physical environment that serves a learning purpose, do we, Lynn?
Right.
No, not at all. Actually also just, I love what you're saying, Jill, agree with all of it. And to me, it comes down to really building a respectful community. And that also means the school and the teachers really being respectful of who the students are when they come in and helping them become parts of a community and also learning about themselves so that we kind of weave those things together. It's not about whether it's like individual or personalized or whether it's sort of more community-based. We are both. We need to feel special, but in a community that we belong to. So it's all of those things weaved together and creating those opportunities for every child to, I think you said, like shine and to feel that they can contribute, but do so in different ways. It's so important to children. And I will come back to your question, and I just I need to get something off my chest here. What is also super important, I think, is that we really make an effort of helping every child develop creativity skills, develop communication skills, develop collaboration skills, even though it might not be their first go-to approach, or we still need to try and scaffold those skills because they are central in the world we live in today. Also building collaboration skills, we can go to the next step is networking skills, because we need to be able to reach out to various communities and bring knowledge together apply it together. So it's really important that we help every kid get, in on various, belonging to various communities and being able to work with other people. And basically it all comes down to, in a school, creating or building and nurturing that learning culture you're looking for, that will really support the learning you believe in, that will support the development of the competences you talk about. And then looking at the physical environment, what is the narrative here? What are you trying to communicate? And how are you helping people work in the way that you believe in? And you are spot on, Anna, when you say to me, it's not about the money. From what I've seen in the schools that we work with, the places where these things are most successful is the places where they get the culture right, where they have buy-in, ownership, and a shared understanding of what learning looks like and what the children need, and that they have this very close dialogue with the children, always ready to tweak and change things, so that school is something you create together every day with all the learners, young ones and adult ones. And your physical environment should be a representation of that. So if you believe in collaboration, if you believe in creativity and innovation, your spaces should actually show that. But you can do it in very cheap ways, and you can buy expensive equipment and expensive furniture. But what we often see is when you do that, and when you have this big, bright, shiny building and all this, all the right stuff, you might feel as a person more sort of distance to it, or because it's something somebody else didn't put in and designed for you. We really believe in co-creating those environments. And then by all means, if you have the money, get some nice gear. But it's really about shaping those environments with what you have and what you can get, and having that be a physical, clear representation of the culture you're looking for.
How do you lead? We are always talking about school change, a school revolution, a learning change, a learning revolution, but we already understood that this is going on, is undergoing, but we still have to inspire a lot more teachers, a lot more parents. How do you do this? How do you inspire other people to join your movement, if we can call this?
It's nice. I think it ties in well with Manuel's question in the chat. I can see that, what about teaching adults? How do we change that? As you said earlier, and I truly believe in invitations to begin changing and to begin rethinking what, the things you believe to be true, and how your whole sort of toolbox might change due to that. And also following up on what Louise said earlier, can we go and do things together and try to model the behavior we'd like to see, and gradually train? So I think we need to see and experience actual examples and be part of that, be sort of embedded in a learning culture somehow. So it's powerful to go and experience other schools and what they're doing, and learning from that and reflecting on it. So you need that reflection piece on top of it. And it's powerful to try out things you haven't tried before and learn from that, and put yourself in a situation that the learners are in all the time, that you haven't tried this before, you don't know how it's going to play out, you're positive that you're not going to be successful in the first round. New things look messy in the beginning, but you'll get there, and you need to do so collaboratively. And you need that inspiration from outside. And every time we meet teachers who feel, actually sometimes it's more difficult to help teachers who feel that they've got it, they know just exactly how it's done, because sometimes then you stop learning. So it's really about keeping that open mind and always having that doubt, like, can we do it better, and what could we do with the students that we have and serve?
Is it okay if I add something?
Yes, of course, Jill.
I completely agree. And it's I'd say most people who around the world don't know a lot about child development, except for the people who actually study child development or who are teachers. And even a lot of us teachers, we're still struggling with certain aspects. What is normal neurotypical behavior, etc. So what we need to do is just make learning visible. What does a 2-year-old, what should they be doing throughout the day? Either take photos or show their art. Should they be coloring in something that somebody else drew? Or should they be creating something of their own? I mean, so what I think they should be doing is show the children what they can do and let them innovate and be creative. And if we show a little bit, every week, for example, to the parents, they'll know little by little, a little bit more about what is developmentally appropriate practice. And so by having portfolios, the children's, whether they're 2 or 10, have their work in a book, so it shows that we value their work, and have it chronological so we can see how the work grows, how they grow as an artist or a writer or whatever, and encourage that the children and their families reflect on their work. So having a wonderful experience is great, but what is even more important is reflecting on that experience. So the children in my group at the moment are 6 and 7 years old, 5, 6, and 7, and they are passionate about animals. And so, we made a story about animals, and one person went, I want to draw animals. And another child said, I don't know how to draw animals. And I said, oh, yes, you do. Maybe your mind doesn't know it, but your fingers know it, and we can do it. So we talked about, looking at an animal, how to observe it, see the shapes. Can you draw a circle? Yes, you can. Well, an alligator, the mouth when it's open looks like a triangle, And then it's funny because at the beginning in September, the children were making drawings and it was hard for them. And now, drawing animals is a piece of cake and just really normal. And so they can reflect upon their growth, their own artistic, creative growth, or their writing or singing or speaking English or whatever. And then share that with their friends, with their family. And that makes them feel valuable. What we do as well is we make books, a book at the end of the term, and it's them, all of their learning all in one, and they keep that forever.
Yeah.
And they get excited about it. So I don't know.
Now, connecting with the question that Manuel is asking in the chat, is there a difference when we are talking about children or about adults? What changes? I was reflecting that, for instance, in our school, we use a model that was designed for adults. Our pedagogical model was first designed to be implemented with adults, and then we adapted to children. But when I was listening to Jill, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jill, what you are saying about children, doesn't it make sense also for adults that are taking courses, even if it is in the college, university, secondary school, it doesn't matter. It's always a question of making the learning experience meaningful. It's a question of making the learning experience visible. It's a question of you as an adult also understanding how you are evolving, how you are growing. Does it make sense that we are always making this strict division between what is child learning, adult learning? Doesn't learning have some common principles that apply to all levels of education? What's your thought about it?
Learning is learning, no matter how old you are. It's your mindset. Children normally have a very open mind. Adults often have a closed mind. And so adults need to act more like children. If children were running the world, I think this world would be a much kinder place. We need to reflect on what we do. Don't become defensive. Talk to others, actively listen what others have to say. I don't know if anyone has seen the video, Austin's Butterfly, but a child was drawing a butterfly and then showed it to the other children in the group. And the other children said, oh, maybe you can do this. So rather than the child saying, oh, but I didn't want to. Oh, I don't want, rather than doing something defensive, the child said, ooh, that's a good idea. I didn't see that. So then the child made another butterfly and then took it back to the group. And the group said, ooh, but maybe the wings are too pointy. Okay. So went back and changed the wings. And over and over and over, the child had an open mind, was listening, and took the advice of others. So it wasn't an individual journey. Well, the child was on a journey to improving themselves artistically, etc., but they were also using other people's ideas and suggestions and advice to make their own work better. And then the next time they do anything, whether it's writing or speaking or drawing, they'll think of that process. So we need to remember to actively listen to what others have to say and be open to trying to change. And that's not easy for an adult. Much easier for children.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to.
No, I think children are great learners. Sometimes they can get a little bit silly with saying, on occasion they say mean things, and we need to redirect that energy for positive, to go in the positive direction. But adults are much, much worse.
So there we have it, everybody, the whole group of adults here. I think, if we just look at learning and adult learning, it's really about doing things, like applying stuff, learning from that experience, and then having these cycles of learning deeper and deeper, and then mastering at the end. But that's not the real problem here, because the real problem is definitely it's getting to that phase where you can start learning, where you're open to learning, where you actually think it makes sense. So we need, we work with a lot of adults and do a lot of, training, and we work more with adults actually than kids. And I think we need to look at sort of a maturing phase before we start learning. So sort of onboarding or inviting people to start learning. And some will be quite reluctant to, because they think they've got it, or their method is the best. And the thing is, people don't start changing unless, one, it makes sense to them. They feel they can master what the change is about, which you often can't if you haven't tried it before. So there's a natural resistance there, because everybody wants to be a really good teacher and do a good job. And so you just say stop if you don't feel you can do it. And then if it's easier to do the new thing than the old thing you were doing all the time. So it's like, can we make sense of it? Can we see ourselves doing it and believing that we can actually do it in a way that's better than before? And will it be easier than what I used to do? And those things it's difficult to get in place. But one of the things that I feel opens up people's minds is when they go and visit other schools and see things that are different and experience colleagues doing things which might have been them, and they say, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. So it's really about also respecting that initial phase of like maybe a more sort of slow acceptance of the need for change, but you need to establish that meaningfulness and need for change when it comes to adults, because adults are very autonomous and they want to do a good job as teachers. So it's really, how do we need to talk about what learning is and what makes sense for young people for us to start changing. But I'm sure we have a lot of teachers here. They can probably help us understand this better.
Is there an ideal school or an ideal learning model? Do you believe that there's one that will fit all sizes and all expectations?
I think there are basic psychological needs that we all have, some of which I just described. I think that's very universal. And then there's a lot of ways of doing these things, but I don't think there's any way around getting your hands dirty, like trying things out, learning from that, because that's really how we learn. It's not just knowing about things, it's trying to do it, and through doing, our understanding will develop.
I wanted to add, you had something about the pandemic and what we learned from it. And I think what I learned, and hopefully we all learned, is that an educational environment, the most important thing is emotions and relationships. If you are scared, nervous, tired, whatever, you will not be able to learn as efficiently. And so if you feel that the people that are surrounding you are going to be supportive, you'll probably be less scared because you'll know that somebody else is there. So just as long as an educational approach has the elements like what my colleague was saying of the psychological, the welcoming atmosphere, the openness to collaboration, there are many ways of doing things. And there are many cultures, so I've tried to learn about as many different educational approaches as possible, whether it's Reggio, there's multiple intelligences, Montessori, high scope. There are many, many different ways. But what we need to do is remember which the children that we're working with now, and how well do we know them? How can we get to know them better? And what can we do to support their learning and make them feel confident to take healthy risks to learn better in the future? So sometimes for some children, they need more structure. So then you give them more structure. Some children need less structure. So then that's what you do. But so we need to find a balance and a way to open your eyes and open your ears and your heart to get to know every child for the way they are. And it's difficult to be a teacher. It's difficult to know how can I help that child have more appropriate behavior. But rather than getting upset or frustrated, it's like, let's say I found something that they did really well. Well, let's make them feel, let's help them shine. And then usually that changes the behavior, even though you were not addressing the behavior itself. So, no, I don't think there's just one way. However, just like my colleague was saying, it's how you are feeling about the learning environment and the people that surround you, the relationships that you have with them. Those are the most important things, in my opinion.
And as school leaders, as consultants, you probably managed to encounter a lot of teachers during your life. And do you see teachers willing to do this leap of faith that at some time we need them to do in their lives to change the way they were taught to do things? And in many cases they still are taught the same way, because at least here in Portugal the teacher training courses are more or less the same for the past decades. So what makes the difference for you as a teacher to be able to inspire the way Jill and Lynn are inspiring the audience? And what makes the difference for a teacher? And how can we support the teachers to do this without being afraid of failing and being afraid of not doing things as they were supposed to do? How can we help other teachers and other educators and parents to join this learning agents community?
Sorry, Lena, would you like to go first? Okay. So just like as a teacher in a classroom, being a leader, I want all of the people that I work with to know that I will support them and I will try to help them no matter what. And I will try to find ways for them to shine throughout their days. And also, if they need help, I'll say, here, I can help you with that. Or I will find somebody else to help you to do that. And so that they don't feel like embarrassed that they don't know how to do something. Not everybody can do everything. I'm terrible, as you know. I'm terrible with IT. It just doesn't agree with me a lot of the time, or I don't agree with it. I don't know. But people help me. You guys help me today. I'm pressing the wrong buttons and everything. So it's also knowing your colleagues' strengths and weaknesses, and having a really good sense of humor, and every day trying to find something positive in so many negatives that do happen, and say, well, that didn't go well, but hey, we'll learn from that and we'll try better tomorrow. We just have to work together. It's being a teacher is not a competition. It's you become part of this club of people who are passionate about making the world a better place. So what are you going to do? If somebody's really struggling teaching a certain child or a certain thing, or trying to figure out how to make learning visible in their classroom, then you say, hey, maybe you could do this, or this is what I tried. This didn't work, but this did. We also work with a group of therapists. So teachers know a little bit about a lot of things, but therapists, specialists in behavior, in occupational therapy, or speech and language, they know a lot about a narrower group of or knowledge or whatever. And what we do is if we have an issue and we're having a hard time teaching something, we can ask for help from these therapists. Say, I tried this strategy, that strategy, and another strategy. Do you see anything else I could do? So rather than making yourself feel like a failure, it's okay to fail because you learn from failure. But rather than saying, oh, I couldn't do that, I'm never going to be able to do that, you say, hey, I don't know how to do that. Maybe I can ask somebody else what they would do, and they could watch me teach and see that's not going as well as it could. And so this is what we have at Jill's place, is we have a lot of this support so that we can just not get to that level of frustration that every teacher runs into every now and then. Like, I don't know what to do in this situation. And you have a group of people who are there to help you, whether it's to give them chocolate or a cup of tea, or to give them ideas or knowledge about fine motor skills, for example. And we just have to learn that we learn better when we are in a group of people rather than by ourselves. We can learn a lot by ourselves, but we'll learn a lot more efficiently when we're with others and we have an open mind and we're helping others and others are helping us.
Yeah. And adding to that, and also what you are commenting on, Manuel and Louise, there are maybe two specific things that you can do as a school, and a lot more, of course, but I'd like to point out a couple of specific things. One is the leadership team being very intentional and really mirroring the learning culture in everything they do, and having those conversations about the values and how learning works as part of every conversation you have with people. It's those things that make you choose to go left or right, or how you cope with a specific conflict or situation where you don't know what to do. It's back to the values, it's back to the vision of how learning should work in your school. So it's really, as a leader, being very close with your teachers, your teaching teams, and having that conversation alive every day, because then our minds begin to grow that way. That's our neurons connect, and those connections get stronger, and we feel more confident. And as you say, Louise, have their back. Know that they are, we are ready for them to fail. It's not beautiful the first couple of times, but you'll get it eventually, and we believe in you. And we'll have your back when the parents are there or the students are acting out or whatever is going to happen. Another thing I think is important is to actually to get your teachers to join other networks, professional networks of various kinds. And there's so many out there internationally that you can dive into, and that will give you a lot of inspiration, and not least a lot of courage to actually take some steps you haven't tried before. because I think what we can do, connecting with each other, not just in our local communities, but across our countries and beyond, so globally, it's really about building the courage to do something different, because you've seen it can happen elsewhere. So why not where you are? But you need that understanding of how things might look for you to be able to take that step.
Lynn, you work with the Global Schools Alliance, so you work with schools that are doing things differently all over the world. What do you see as common ground for all of them?
A common ground for it's schools like High Tech High, one of my favorites, like a Leadership Academy in Cambodia, schools in New Zealand, India, Denmark, and yeah. So a common ground is that things are meaningful to our learners. And meaningful is not your textbook, and since it's Friday and now we're on page 9, that's not meaningful in itself. It needs to be something that you find useful, that every student will find useful in the context of their lives. And that will vary from student to student, but often in groups. And so there's this whole teams, building strong teams around this can help you actually create that sense of purpose and meaningfulness. And then when you develop it with the students and find a way, what are their lives about? And then you sort of work with the learning and embed the learning through, just like you said, Jill, if you're interested in horses, then let's have a whole theme about that and find we can learn all sorts of things. So that's the challenge for the teachers to really, what I normally refer to as putting all the carrots and vegetables into the lasagna, because they'd love to eat the lasagna, but they don't want the vegetables, but they will be in there, and it'll be a very nurturing meal when we get it right. So that's sort of one of the secret things that teachers are challenged with. So common ground, meaningfulness, it's you doing things hands-on, it's connecting with your local environment, doing things that are real. So it's really tearing down the walls between school and your local community or society. It's like learning is about life. So let's learn in life and have that be our high quality lives. And let's be very intentional about the time we spend together, that it's enriching and that it's great to be part of, that you feel you're on a mission, or it's fun. It could be different things, but that you feel it's valuable. And then you can always do a little bit of training, this and that, every now and then. But your sort of overall experience of school is that, it should be that it's meaningful to you in your life.
Jill, do you want to add something? Manuel is saying in the chat that one problem that Portuguese teachers point out is how do we teach meaningful stuff and also the defined contents? What about time management? Can we balance what is meaningful and what is the official curriculum? Can we do this without compromising our school?
Yes, well, it's very interesting, because when you do the regular curriculum and, page 79 on, March 8th or whatever, you test the children at the end of the year and say, 90% of the children pass or whatever. But then you give them the same test 3 months later, and their knowledge of that they learned decreases dramatically. So the idea is that you dig deep. So in a curriculum, let's say you study about war, or a lot of high schools, you study about history, and there's war in history. Rather than study about every single battle of every single war and trying to memorize what year this what is war about? Dig deep into what war is and what caused the conflict, for example. You could talk about peace as well, but dig deep. So really make a project so meaningful that you'll never forget it. I've gone through a few as a teacher and also as a student, or just living, that I will never forget. And it's because it was profoundly part of my life at the time. And we dug deeply and worked together, failed, and then try to improve. So, you want to have something stick, not just for the test, but forever. So one of the things I learned was you want to teach so that in 2 years, they'll still remember that content. So for example, I'll give you an example. Every spring, we like to study animals, and we often hatch chicks or ducks. They never, ever forget about that. Counting the 21 days until, on the calendar, until the chicks hatch, watching them hatch. They're really ugly and slimy when they come out of the egg. And then 5-6 hours later, they're all fluffy and cute. And then every day we weigh them, and trying to catch a chick to put them on the scale is very difficult. And then they poop on the scale. How heavy is the poop? They don't forget that. And, I'll just give you an example. We were weighing chicks, and a child said, "But what happens when they get to be more than 100 grams? I don't know how to count more than 100. I said, "Don't worry. The chicks will teach you." "The chicks are going to teach me? Oh my gosh." And so then the chicks, were like 110 grams. And I said, "Do you know what number that is?" And they're like, "Well," and then they figured it out that it was 110. I don't know if another child helped them. And they're like, "Oh my God, the chicks taught us," and it's just having a sense of humor and having fun. But it was, I must say that a lot of times I see children who I had, 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and they'll say things like, "I remember drawing the ducks and the duck pooped on my paper." And that was the funniest thing in the world. So there you go. You want to make it meaningful. You want to make it fun. You want to dig in deep. If you have learned about chicks or ducks, you can apply that same knowledge to crocodiles or platypuses. You don't have to study every single animal in the world to understand what an egg is and what gestation is or whatever, and growing and what they need and weighing them and measuring feathers and stuff like that. I hope I answered questions that were asked.
Just to close our conversation, I shared the challenge through the chat, and I would ask you also to answer it. If you had to share a statement today, what would you add to the sentence? "In my career as a learning agent, I will." What would be the end of your sentence? What could you add to this?
Personalized learning and value the child, every child.
Thank you.
So always be curious about what next step could improve what we're doing together.
Thank you for your ideas, your insights, your inspiration. It was really great to be even at a distance with you. I don't know if you have any questions, any suggestions. I'll just see in the chat. I don't think we have any questions, but if you do have questions, please share it. And I will also ask Isabel to prepare the video that Lisa from Aalborg University prepared for this conference, as she wouldn't be able to attend face-to-face. So we have her statement and her insights on how to lead the change in education in a video. Isabel is now preparing to share it. But if you have any questions or any thoughts that you want to add, please do before we start the video.
I just wanted to thank you all for such a lovely time. It was so nice. It was nice to have met you. Thank you for the invitation. And you should do more of these. This is absolutely wonderful. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day.